Question 2. On the Gettysburg campus, we teach none of the 3 per week, fairly short 50-minute classes. Our shortest is the typical twice-a-week class that's about an hour and a half, and the longest are nearly 3 hours long, which presents somewhat of a challenge for both the teachers and the students in keeping the enthusiasm level high throughout. What are some of the in-class experiences that you remember as being particularly effective, where time seems to fly by, yet you've learned a lot?
Discussions. Yeah, any kind of discussion where the class is working kind of, where it's not just listening to a lecture, where we're actually discussing something and it's a lot of participation. That it's just goes like that. And sometimes we don't even know.
The more, absolutely. The more interactive the class is, the more people that are involved.
Yeah.
It literally does just fly by. It's like, and in the other classes, you're right. If it's just a strict lecture, you're kind of peeking over the professor's head, looking at the clock. Okay, 10 more minutes. I think I can do it. Kind of thing. Discussion, absolutely.
And not just class discussions as well. They just, I know it can be difficult, but like some of my past professors, like they incorporate games into their classes, and I thought that was fun, and made the fact that class go super fast. So that was fun.
I also like when a professor is particularly good at storytelling, if it has to do with the particular subject that they're teaching, and it ties into the subject of the day, and they have a personal experience or experiences that they share, you tend to remember, you tend to make that relation. Oh, I remember Professor so-and-so told this really funny story, or this really sad story, or this really touching story about, and then, okay, yeah, I remember that story in conjunction to this particular material. And it's engaging, more so than your lecture, more so than your PowerPoints, which I prefer over straight lecture. But yeah, for me, I have a hard time with straight lecture. I have a hard time with PowerPoints where the teacher is just reading off the PowerPoint. You could just send that to me in an email and I could do that myself. So it kind of feels like a little bit of a waste of time when that happens.
And I think with the 3-hour classes too, if there's a way that, like the first class, you can like get your students to introduce each other and meet a little bit because you're only seeing each other once a week, so it's really hard to connect with those students. And I know one of my classes was a 3-hour class, and that made the time go by really fast, was knowing my peers, and we actually got involved with each other. So
I actually had a night class where she gave us a 15-minute break in the middle, and everybody ran off and got snacks and brought it back. And that was great because it was just about the point where you were to the point where you just could not think anymore. And by the time everybody got back with food, it was fine.
I haven't signed up for a 3-hour class for specifically that reason. I was thinking, dude, I'm not in a class for a 3 hour, but I would if you knew that there was going to be a break in between, because then it's not a 3-hour class anymore. It's just 2 different classes, and we do that every day.
The majority of 3-hour classes, there's a break somewhere. I definitely think, I'm sure the professors after 3 hours need a break somewhere in there. But I mean, I think sort of playing the devil's advocate at this point too with this. I think sometimes though, discussion's great. It's good to be interactive, but there are those classes that it's got to be lecture. You just have to get the knowledge out there. You have to get the information out there. And of course, every professor is going to teach differently based upon their personality and their experience and what their subject is. And the hour and a half, I don't think an hour and a half is that long to sit in even a lecture class a lot of times. Yeah, there's some that drags on, but it's just, I think it's part of the game. It's just how it works. It's the methods of the madness. It's college. You got to get it done sometimes. The 3-hour classes, I think it is a little more challenging because even with a break, and a lot of those are the evening classes, at the end of the day, most people are sort of restless anyways. It's the end of the day. They're winding down and taking those breaks, or instead of making it 3 hours of lecture, even if it's just, okay, homework questions for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a large amount of time that you can do these things. Okay, 10 minutes, anybody, have questions on a homework or a project. And then you do get that feedback from other students, and maybe they ask a valuable question that you hadn't thought about, but is useful to you as well. I don't think that it has to be, okay, we're going to have 30 minutes of discussion, because I think that can drag too, because not every student maybe has valuable information to offer, but they're still going to sit there and talk. So you kind of feel like, I really paid to listen to them talk instead of maybe the master's or PhD. That's just me. I'm more of that professional business. I'm really here to learn. That's what I'm here to do. So
it's going to be subject dependent too, like she said. I mean, you're not going to be able to pull off a discussion in a math class So it depends, it's also dependent on the subject.
What about taking notes? Because during those lecture classes, you often need to take notes. What's most effective for you? I mean, do you like PowerPoint presentations? Do you like having those notes given to you? Or does it help you remember the information more efficiently in different ways?
I think PowerPoint is definitely helpful, and it's helpful when they send the PowerPoints to you, like on a website like Me2Well.
Yeah.
Some professors don't do that. They want you to take the notes in class. So I think that's really, really helpful. And not just reading off the PowerPoint as well, outside information as well. Because then I look at my book. What's the purpose of me purchasing a book if I'm going to get all my information from the side?
The class that I enjoy the most, right, this semester, is almost strictly PowerPoint, but you have to take notes on those PowerPoints. You know, they're blank PowerPoints, basically. And I find it very effective for me, and they are available on B2L. The same thing, I've got some professors where they don't make their PowerPoints available on B2L, and I think that's actually a disservice. I think that actually hurts the students a little bit, because we're not going to get everything. Even if it's a straight lecture, you're not going to catch everything. So as much as we can put on B2L, we can go say, you know what, I remember talking about this, let me go find it. I think is valuable for the students.
Yeah, and when it is a lecture and you're not using a PowerPoint, it helps to give the students an outline of what you're going to be talking to that day. Like I had a lecture class one time and I used a recorder, so I recorded the lecture and I got permission from the teacher to do that. And I found that instead of taking detailed notes, I just wasn't able to keep up with writing all the information that was coming at me. So I found that since I was given an outline, I was able to write the times on my recorder down on that outline, and it helped a lot because then I could go back on my recorder to where, whoever it was talked about that. And I found that extremely helpful, just to have an idea.
The only thing I would say about PowerPoint though is I am in a class now, and it's a 3-hour class, and we are told to read the chapter before it is taught. And then we are given a PowerPoint and pretty much read the PowerPoint during the 3-hour class, and that is very tempting to skip because I could do that at home. So when the PowerPoint is given to you and the textbook is, you're told to read it, I think bringing something else to talk about to class, because I could seriously sit at my house for 3 hours and do the exact same thing. And yeah,
So that's your worst scenario. That's your scenario for a worst class situation.
Yeah.
pretty much.
yeah.
What are some other worst case scenarios for a class that never seems to end?
A professor who has no idea what he's talking about. Who was just not good at, he could be good at the subject, he's just not good at teaching it. And that's just not good.
Any other comments there?
Well, no, I was just, what's your name when you talked about the 3-hour PowerPoint lecture? What is it?
Oh, Amanda.
Amanda.
Yeah.
Do the rest of you agree with her?
Oh, absolutely, that's a waste of
If,
time.
if you're reading off the PowerPoint, it's a total waste of time.
Yeah.
That's why I made sure that I said that I love the PowerPoint lectures, but they have to be, you can't read off the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint should only have the highlighted information.
In other words,
for us to fill in.
you like it when the PowerPoint is supportive of what the professor.
Yes.
While I'm on that, some of the best courses I ever had, undergraduate and graduate, most memorable, and I think effective courses were ones in which the instructor, professor, over the scope or the trajectory of the course, told you mentioned storytelling, a theme, story that over the course of the whole, over the arc of the whole course, told a coherent story. How do you feel about that? I realize in some cases it may mean simplifying certain things that you then expect the students to get on their own outside of class. But how important is that kind of storytelling narrative to tie the things together, of course, so that things may not seem as random, perhaps?
I think the more serious students will like that, or at least I do. But I think some of the students who are just checking blocks may not even get that it's the same story. You know what I'm saying? That it continues, and that maybe, this piece of information that you got in the 3rd or 4th week was really what you needed to shed light on what was said in the 1st week. And that may not translate over, but I find it challenging.
Well, you're going to have students like that in every class. So you're going to have the ones who get it. You're going to have the ones that are just there because they need that class and that's the only reason they're there. And they just want to get that C so they can move on. I mean, that's any class that I've ever been in. You've got your students who are are serious are going to pick up on that. You have different talents in every classroom. Amanda and I are in class together. We were talking this morning. She's smart at the math and the science. I'm not. I'm very word-based. She's very number-based. So, we're in the same class and we're getting two different